He thought banishing his pregnant mate would bury his darkest secrets forever. The Lycan King never imagined that the child growing in her womb would one day return not as a broken outcast, but as a powerful force wielding forbidden magic that could shatter the kingdom itself. Years of lies, political alliances, and a false narrative of betrayal had kept the throne safe, until now. Because blood doesn't forget, and some lineages refuse to stay buried. Chapter 1. Some kings rule with strength. Others rule with fear. Magnus Blackthorn, the Lycan King, ruled with ice in his veins and stone in his heart. He did not shout. He did not hesitate. On the night he cast her out, his voice was flat, devoid of any warmth. "Elara," he said, standing above her on the throne dais like a god passing judgment, "you are no longer my mate. Your bastard child is not of my blood. For the sake of this kingdom's alliances, you will be removed, tonight." Elara's knees buckled. Her hands flew protectively to her swollen belly as sharp pain lanced through her heart. 8 months. This child times his times child had kicked strongly just hours ago, full of life and promise. Now she felt it twisting inside her, as if sensing the betrayal of its own father. "Please," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Magnus, I swear on the moon itself he is yours. Let the seers read my blood. Let them prove it." The king's cold silver eyes flicked down to her for only a moment. No pity. No regret. Only calculated indifference. "Lies," he replied flatly. "Your infidelity threatens everything I have built. Guards." 2 massive Lycan warriors seized her arms with bruising force. Elara cried out as they dragged her backward across the cold stone floor, her bare feet scraping painfully. Terror flooded her veins. The Deadlands. Everyone knew what waited beyond the citadel walls. Endless frozen wasteland, savage rogues, bloodthirsty creatures that fed on the weak and the exiled. "No! Magnus, don't do this!" she screamed, voice breaking with raw agony. "I love you. This is your son. Please, don't let our child die in that hell." The king turned his back on her completely, his broad shoulders rigid. "Take her beyond the gates," he ordered without looking back. "If the wasteland claims her and the bastard, so be it. The alliance must stand." As the heavy iron gates groaned open, icy wind howled in like a living beast. Elara fought wildly, sobbing, her heart shattering with every step. The last thing she saw was Magnus standing motionless on the balcony, staring out into the darkness as if she had already ceased to exist. They threw her into the blizzard like discarded trash. That night, the greatest lie of the kingdom was sealed. But Elara did not die. She crawled through snow and pain. She gave birth alone in a frozen cave, screaming in terror and grief as lightning split the sky. And in that moment of agony, a boy was born carrying royal blood and a forbidden power that made the very shadows tremble. The Lycan King believed banishing his pregnant mate would bury his secrets forever. He was wrong, because 23 years later, that boy had become a man, and he was coming to take back everything that was stolen from his mother. Chapter 2. The Deadlands did not forgive. They did not forget. And they certainly did not show mercy to a banished, heavily pregnant Lycan queen. Elara stumbled through the blinding blizzard for hours after the gates slammed shut behind her. Each step sent fresh agony ripping through her body. Her bare feet were cut raw by jagged ice. Her swollen belly felt like it was tearing apart with every contraction that gripped her. The wind howled like thousands of vengeful spirits, whipping snow into her face until she could barely see. "Hold on, little one," she gasped, clutching her belly with frozen hands. "Mama's here. I won't let you die here." Fear clawed at her throat. She had heard the stories since she was a child, rogue packs that tore exiles apart for sport, shadow beasts that fed on fear itself, and the endless cold that froze blood in your veins before you even realized you were dying. A sharp, violent contraction dropped her to her knees. She screamed into the storm, the sound swallowed instantly by the wind. Blood stained the snow beneath her. She was alone, completely alone. With the last of her strength, she crawled into a narrow cave, barely sheltered from the gale. The walls were black and glistening with ice. No fire, no warmth, only darkness and the distant howls of things that should not exist. Hours blurred into terror. She pushed through wave after wave of blinding pain, biting her own arm to keep from screaming too loudly and drawing predators. Tears froze on her cheeks. Every sob felt like betrayal not just from Magnus, but from the moon goddess herself. "Why?" she whispered brokenly between contractions. "Why did he do this to us?" When the final push came, she was almost delirious with exhaustion and fear. A tiny, furious cry cut through the howling wind. Her son. She pulled the newborn to her chest with shaking arms, wrapping him in the torn remains of her cloak. His small body was warm against her freezing skin. Tiny claws already tipped his fingers, a sign of strong Lycan blood. But when his eyes opened for the first time, they glowed with an unnatural silver light that made the shadows in the cave recoil. Alara's breath caught in terror and wonder. This power. It was not normal. It was ancient. Forbidden. The kind of power that kings killed to keep hidden. She kissed his damp forehead, whispering through chattering teeth. "I name you Kale. Kale Blackthorn. Your father cast us away like we were nothing. But you will never be nothing." Outside the cave, something large moved in the darkness. A low growl echoed. Alara clutched her newborn tighter, heart pounding with fresh fear. She had survived the exile. She had brought her son into the world. But the Deadlands were only just beginning to test them. And somewhere far away, in the warmth of his citadel, the Lycan King slept peacefully, unaware that the greatest threat to his throne had just taken his first breath. Chapter 3. The first years in the Deadlands were a nightmare that never ended. Alara learned quickly that mercy did not exist here. Every dawn brought new terror. She scavenged frozen roots and trapped sickly rodents with trembling hands, while shielding tiny Kale from the biting wind. Her body, still weak from birth, bore fresh scars from claws and fangs of creatures that stalked the night. But the deepest wound remained the one Magnus had carved into her heart. At night, when Kale finally slept against her chest, she would whisper the truth into the darkness like a curse. "Your father is the Lycan King," she told him, voice hoarse with pain and hatred. "He chose power over us. He looked me in the eyes and called you a bastard. He sent us here to die." Kale grew fast, unnaturally fast. By age 5, he was already taller than most children, with sharp silver eyes that seemed to pierce the shadows. But it was the power that frightened Alara the most. One winter night, when a pack of starving rogues attacked their small shelter, Kale stood between his mother and the beasts. He was only 7. A terrifying surge of dark energy exploded from him. Black tendrils of shadow lashed out, tearing the attackers apart before they could even scream. The air grew ice cold, the ground cracked with unnatural frost. Alara watched in horror as the shadows retreated back into her son's small body. Kale turned to her, eyes glowing, breathing hard. "Did I do bad, Mama?" She pulled him close, shaking with fear not of the rogues, but of what lived inside him. "No, my love," she lied, tears freezing on her lashes. "You protected us, but you must never use that power again, not until you're ready. The king, your father, would kill you if he knew." She taught him to hide it, to survive among outcasts, to listen to the whispers of the wasteland that spoke of old magic and broken bloodlines. As the years dragged on, the kingdom's lie spread like poison. Messengers from the citadel told tales of Queen Alara's betrayal, how she had taken a lover and shamed the crown. How the king, in his mercy, had only banished her instead of executing her. The packs believed it. Alliances strengthened. Magnus sat secure on his iron throne, marrying the rival Alpha's daughter and producing legitimate heirs. But in the Deadlands, Alara's hatred burned hotter than any fire. Every scar on her body, every night Kale cried from hunger, every moment of terror they endured, she blamed him. Kale grew into a young man forged in pain and shadow. He learned to fight, to lead small bands of outcasts, and the forbidden power inside him grew stronger, whispering promises of revenge. One night, As they stood on a frozen ridge overlooking the distant lights of the citadel, Alara placed a hand on her 19-year-old son's shoulder. "They think we are dead," she said, voice trembling with years of suppressed agony. "But blood remembers. One day, Kale, you will make him feel every second of the fear he put us through." Kale's silver eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. A low, dangerous growl rumbled in his chest. The boy who was never supposed to survive had become something the Lycan King could never have imagined. And the shadows were beginning to hunger for a throne. Chapter 4. 23 years of survival had turned the Deadlands into a crucible of nightmares, but nothing prepared Alara for the night. Everything changed. Kale was 23 now, tall, scarred, and radiating a dark aura that made even the hardest outcasts step aside. The forbidden power no longer hid. It pulsed beneath his skin like a living storm, making the air colder wherever he walked. They had planned the return for months. Tonight was the night. Alara's heart hammered violently as they crouched on the ridge overlooking the citadel. The Iron Throne's towers gleamed under the blood moon, mocking her with their distant warmth. Every beat of her pulse screamed danger. If they were caught before reaching the gates, Magnus would not exile them again. He would rip them apart. "Stay hidden until I signal," Kale whispered, his voice low and edged with lethal calm. But Alara saw the tremor in his clenched fists. Even he was afraid. They slipped through the outer patrols like ghosts. Every snapped twig made Alara's breath catch. Every distant howl sent ice through her veins. She kept replaying the night of her banishment, the coldness in Magnus's eyes, the way he turned his back as if she were already dead. They reached the inner walls. Kale pressed his palm against the ancient stone. His eyes flared silver. Black shadows surged from his fingers, silently dissolving a section of the barrier. The power felt wrong hungry. Alara grabbed his arm, whispering in terror. "Kale, it's getting stronger. I can feel it pulling at you. What if you can't control it?" He looked at her, silver eyes burning with decades of inherited pain. "Then it will do what I cannot." They moved deeper into the citadel. Guards patrolled nearby. One wrong sound and alarms would shatter the night. Alara's chest tightened with suffocating fear. This was suicide, but turning back meant another lifetime of freezing hell. Suddenly, a patrol rounded the corner. Kale shoved his mother behind a pillar. His body tensed like a coiled predator. The lead guard paused, sniffing the air. "Something's off. Smells like shadows?" Kale's power flared uncontrollably. Dark tendrils exploded outward before he could stop them. The guards were yanked into the darkness, their screams cut short in wet, choking silence. Blood sprayed across the stone. Alara covered her mouth, eyes wide with horror. "Kale?" she hissed, voice shaking. "You're losing control." He stood breathing hard, shadows writhing around him like living smoke. For a terrifying moment, his eyes were completely black, no longer her son, but something ancient and vengeful. Then the power receded, barely. "We're close," he growled, voice distorted. "The throne room is just ahead." Alara's legs trembled as they crept forward. Her heart pounded so hard she feared it would betray them. Every step closer to Magnus brought back the agony of that night, the betrayal, the cold dismissal, the terror of giving birth alone in the snow. Now her son carried that same coldness, but twisted with something far more dangerous. The heavy doors to the throne room loomed before them. Behind those doors waited the Lycan King, oblivious, secure, powerful. Kale placed his hand on the iron handle. Alara whispered one last terrified warning. "Whatever happens, remember who you are." The door began to creak open, and the air itself seemed to scream with dread. Chapter 5. The throne room doors crashed open with a sound like thunder. Magnus Blackthorn sat upon the iron throne, taller and colder than Alara remembered. 23 years had etched deeper lines into his face, but his silver eyes still held the same merciless indifference. Alara stepped into the light first, her body shaking with decades of suppressed agony. Kale moved beside her like a storm, given form, shadows curling around his shoulders, eyes blazing with forbidden silver fire. The king's expression didn't change at first. Then recognition hit. His hand tightened on the arm of the throne until the metal groaned. "Alara?" His voice was flat, almost bored. "So the wasteland failed to kill you? How disappointing." Alara's heart shattered all over again. Even now, facing the woman he had condemned to death and the son he had never acknowledged, Magnus showed no remorse. No fear, only mild irritation. "You called my child a bastard," she said, voice cracking with raw pain. Tears burned her eyes. "You dragged me through these halls like garbage, while I begged for our lives. I gave birth alone in the freezing dark because of you." The court gasped. Guards drew weapons, but Kale raised one hand, and the shadows in the room surged forward, freezing every warrior in place. Screams of terror echoed as black tendrils wrapped around throats and limbs. Magnus finally rose, his face hardening. "Control your pet, woman, or I will end this bloodline tonight." Kale stepped forward, his voice low and trembling with fury. "I am no pet. I am Kale Blackthorn, your son, the one you tried to erase before he even drew breath." For the first time, real fear flickered in the Lycan King's eyes. Not for himself, but for the power radiating from the young man before him. The forbidden magic that defied every law of their kind. "You should have stayed dead," Magnus hissed. "That power, it will consume you. It will destroy everything." Kale laughed bitterly, shadows whipping violently around him. "Good. Let it consume me. Let it consume you." Alara watched in horror as her son's eyes turned completely black. The temperature plummeted, cracks spiderwebbed across the Iron Throne. She could feel the ancient power fighting to break free, hungry, uncontrollable, terrifying. "Kale, stop!" she cried, stepping toward him even as fear choked her. "Don't become like him." Magnus snarled and lunged forward, shifting partially into his massive Lycan form. Kale met him head-on. The collision sent a shockwave through the entire citadel. Throne room windows shattered. Guards screamed as shadows tore through the air. Alara fell to her knees, sobbing, torn between the man who had broken her and the son she had raised in pain and love. The battle between father and son had only just begun. Who would claim the Iron Throne? Would Kyle's forbidden power save them, or doom them all? Tell me in the comments right now. Who do you think should sit on the Iron Throne? Should Kale forgive his father, or destroy him completely? Do you want to see Alara finally get her revenge? Drop your theories, your anger, and who you're rooting for below. If you want episode 2, smash that like button and comment "Blood for the Throne." Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next.